The disappearance of Chandra Levy. In the spring of 2001, Washington, D.C., pulsed with the frenetic energy of power and ambition, its streets a labyrinth of secrets whispered behind closed doors. Amid the cherry blossoms and marble monuments, a young woman named Chandra Levy, just 24 years old, stepped into the city's shadows, unaware that her name would soon be etched into one of America's most chilling and perplexing mysteries. Chandra, a bright and driven graduate student from Modesto, California, had come to the capital as an intern at the Federal Bureau of Prisons, her eyes alight with dreams of a future in public service. Her dark hair and warm smile masked a quiet intensity, a hunger to carve her place in a world of influence. But beneath her ambition lay a dangerous secret, a forbidden affair that would unravel her life and captivate a nation. Chandra's story begins in the quiet sprawl of Modesto, where she grew up as the daughter of Robert and Susan Levy, a close-knit family with roots in the sun-drenched Central Valley. A graduate student at the University of Southern California, Chandra was no stranger to hard work, her academic path marked by a relentless pursuit of excellence. In 2001, she secured an internship in Washington, D.C., a city where the corridors of power promised opportunity, but also peril. She moved into a modest apartment in the DuPont Circle neighborhood, a vibrant area buzzing with young professionals and political insiders. To those who knew her, Chandra was disciplined, private, and fiercely independent, often seen jogging through the city's parks to clear her mind. But there was another side to her, one she guarded carefully, a side that would pull her into a web of scandal and suspicion. Enter Gary Condit, a charismatic and seasoned congressman from California's 18th District, a man whose polished demeanor and political savvy had carried him through 5 terms in the House of Representatives. At 53, Condit was a powerful figure, a senior member of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, with a reputation for charm and discretion. Married with 2 grown children, he projected the image of a devoted family man, but rumors swirled of a darker side, a penchant for extramarital affairs that he kept hidden from the public eye. It was in this clandestine world that Chandra and Condit's paths crossed, their connection sparked in the orbit of D.C.'s political elite. Chandra, a constituent from his district, had met him through her internship, and what began as a professional acquaintance soon deepened into something far more dangerous. Their affair was a tightly held secret, conducted in the shadows of Washington's elite circles. Chandra confided in her family about a high-profile man she called her secret friend, hinting at the need for caution. She told her mother, Susan, that this man advised her not to carry identification when they met, a cryptic instruction that sent a chill down Susan's spine even then. Phone records later revealed a flurry of calls from Chandra's line to Condit's private office, often at odd hours, suggesting a relationship that was anything but casual. For Chandra, the affair was a thrilling yet perilous dance with power, a chance to be close to a man who moved through the highest echelons of government. For Condit, it was another conquest, a risky indulgence that he believed he could keep hidden. But secrets in Washington have a way of unraveling, and this one would come at a deadly cost. What drove Chandra to pursue such a dangerous liaison? Perhaps it was the allure of proximity to power, the intoxicating pull of a man who wielded influence in a city built on it. Or maybe it was the thrill of the forbidden, the rush of secrecy in a world where every move was scrutinized. For Condit, the motives were murkier. Was it merely the ego of a powerful man seeking validation in the arms of a younger woman? Or was there something more sinister at play, a need to control, to possess, to ensure that his secrets remained buried? As the affair deepened, so did the stakes, and Chandra's life began to intertwine with forces she could not foresee. The city itself was a character in this unfolding drama, its beauty masking a darker underbelly. Washington, D.C., in 2001 was a place of stark contrasts. Gleaming government buildings stood alongside neglected neighborhoods, and the serene paths of Rock Creek Park, where Chandra often jogged, concealed dangers that lurked in its wooded depths. The park, a sprawling 1,700-acre oasis of green in the heart of the city, was both a haven and a hunting ground, its trails frequented by joggers and predators alike. It was here, in this deceptive tranquility, that Chandra's story would take its darkest turn. As spring turned to summer, the nation's capital buzzed with the usual scandals and intrigues, but nothing could prepare it for the storm that Chandra's disappearance would unleash. Her affair with Condit, once a private indiscretion, would become a public obsession, fueling speculation about motives that ranged from passion to betrayal to something far more sinister. Was Chandra a victim of a lover's jealousy, a political cover-up, or a random act of violence in a city that hid its dangers well? The question hung like a specter over Washington, drawing the media, the police, and a grieving family into a mystery that would refuse to yield its secrets. The motives behind what happened to Chandra remained shrouded in shadow. Some whispered of a scorned lover, others of a powerful man desperate to protect his reputation. There were those who pointed to the city itself, its parks and streets a stage for random acts of violence that needed no motive beyond opportunity. As Chandra jogged through Rock Creek Park that fateful May day, she carried with her the weight of her secrets, and perhaps the attention of someone watching from the shadows. The affair with Condit had placed her in a dangerous orbit, one where ambition, desire, and deception collided with devastating consequences. What began as a fleeting romance would end in a tragedy that still haunts the nation's capital, a chilling reminder that even in the heart of power, no one is truly safe. Washington, D.C., May 1st, 2001. The morning air was crisp, heavy with the scent of blooming dogwoods and the promise of a new day. Chandra Levy, her dark hair pulled back, laced up her running shoes in her DuPont Circle apartment, the hum of the city seeping through her window. At 24, she was a woman on the cusp of something bigger, her internship at the Federal Bureau of Prisons nearing its end, her ambitions pulling her toward a future she could almost taste. She grabbed her keys, left her ID behind, perhaps at the whispered urging of her secret lover, and headed out, her sneakers hitting the pavement with a rhythm that matched her restless heart. Her destination was Rock Creek Park, a sprawling emerald maze, where joggers wove through ancient oaks and hidden trails. It was a routine she loved, a moment of freedom in a city that thrived on control. But this time, Chandra would not return. The day unfolded quietly at first, the city oblivious to the absence of one young woman. Chandra's apartment sat silent, her phone untouched, her computer frozen on a search for directions to Rock Creek Park. Hours ticked by, then days, and a creeping unease began to settle over those who knew her. Her parents, Robert and Susan Levy, back in Modesto, California, grew frantic when their calls went unanswered. By May 6th, Susan's maternal instincts screamed that something was wrong, and she contacted the D.C. police. What followed was a descent into a nightmare that would grip the nation, a story of vanished dreams, tangled lies, and the city's dark underbelly laid bare. The police arrived at Chandra's apartment to find an eerie stillness. Her belongings were undisturbed, her purse, her wallet, her ID, all left behind. The only clue was her laptop, its browser open to a MapQuest page displaying Rock Creek Park. It was as if she had stepped out for a jog and simply vanished into the ether. The park, a 1,700-acre wilderness in the heart of D.C., became the focal point of the search. Its winding trails and dense thickets offered endless places to hide, or to be hidden. Search teams scoured the area, helicopters buzzing overhead, their blades slicing through the humid air. Volunteers combed the underbrush, calling Chandra's name, but the park seemed to swallow their voices, offering nothing but silence in return. As days turned to weeks, the case exploded into a media frenzy, the kind that thrives on mystery and scandal. Chandra's disappearance wasn't just a missing persons case. It was a puzzle wrapped in allure, with a cast of characters that seemed ripped from a political thriller. At its center was Gary Condit, the silver-haired congressman whose affair with Chandra became the spark that ignited a firestorm. Whispers of their relationship leaked, first to the tabloids, then to every major news outlet. Reporters camped outside Condit's Adams Morgan apartment, their cameras flashing like vultures circling prey. The public devoured every detail, the late-night phone calls, the clandestine meetings, the rumors of Condit's roving eye. Was Chandra's disappearance tied to their affair? Had she become a liability to a man whose career depended on his carefully curated image? The media painted Condit as both villain and enigma, a powerful man with secrets to protect. His reluctance to speak openly fueled speculation. When he finally addressed the press, his words were measured, evasive, his eyes betraying a flicker of panic. He admitted to a friendship with Chandra, but denied any romantic involvement, a claim that rang hollow as more details emerged. Chandra's aunt, Linda Zamsky, revealed that Chandra had confided in her about the affair, describing Condit as a man who demanded discretion, urging her to leave her ID behind when they met. The public's imagination ran wild. Had Condit silenced Chandra to protect his marriage, his career, his power? The narrative was intoxicating, a heady mix of sex, politics, and betrayal that kept viewers glued to their screens. Yet the investigation was faltering. The D.C. police, overwhelmed by the case's complexity and the media's relentless pressure, struggled to find solid leads. Rock Creek Park was vast, its terrain unforgiving. Search dogs sniffed out nothing, and divers scoured the park streams to no avail. The park itself seemed complicit, its shadows hiding answers that refused to surface. Theories multiplied. Had Chandra been abducted by a stranger? Had she stumbled into a drug deal gone wrong? Or was this a targeted act, tied to the secrets she carried about her powerful lover? The absence of her body only deepened the mystery, leaving investigators chasing ghosts. Then, on May 22, 2002, a grim discovery shattered the stalemate. A man walking his dog in Rock Creek Park stumbled upon human remains, partially hidden beneath leaves and dirt, in a secluded ravine far from the main trails. The skull, the bones, the tattered remnants of a sports bra. It was Chandra. Dental records confirmed her identity, and the city gasped. The vibrant young woman, who had jogged into the park 387 days earlier, was gone, her life reduced to a scattering of bones in a place that once felt like sanctuary. The medical examiner ruled her death a homicide, though the exact cause, strangulation, blunt force trauma, remained elusive, the body too decomposed to tell its full story. The discovery sent shockwaves through Washington. For Chandra's parents, it was a devastating confirmation of their worst fears, a loss that tore at the fabric of their lives. Susan Levy's voice cracked as she spoke to reporters, her grief raw and unfiltered. "My daughter is gone, and we may never know why." The media, meanwhile, doubled down on Condit, dissecting his every move. Had he known more than he let on? Had he orchestrated a cover-up? The congressman's career began to crumble under the weight of suspicion, his once charming facade now a lightning rod for public outrage. But the investigation took a darker turn, one that hinted at a truth more sinister than a political scandal. While Condit dominated headlines, a quieter thread emerged, one that pointed not to a powerful man, but to a predator who had been hiding in plain sight. Rock Creek Park was no stranger to violence. In the months before Chandra's disappearance, other women had reported attacks along its trails, their stories eerily similar. A lone assailant, a sudden assault, a narrow escape. The police began to wonder if Chandra had crossed paths with someone far more dangerous than a cheating congressman, someone who thrived on the park's isolation and the vulnerability of its visitors. The tension in Washington was palpable, a city holding its breath as the case teetered on the edge of revelation. Chandra's remains offered few answers, but they raised haunting questions. Her sports bra, knotted and twisted, suggested a struggle, a desperate fight for survival. Had she run into the wrong person at the wrong time? Or was her death a calculated act tied to the secret she carried? The media's obsession with Condit began to feel like a distraction, a juicy narrative that obscured a more chilling reality. Somewhere in the city, a killer walked free, their identity buried in the same shadows that had swallowed Chandra. As the summer of 2002 dawned, the case reached a fever pitch, the public hungry for answers that seemed just out of reach. The discovery of Chandra's remains had resolved one mystery. She was no longer missing, but it opened a Pandora's box of new questions. Who had taken her life and why? Was it a random act of violence, or was there a deeper motive, one tied to the affair that had captivated the nation? The police redoubled their efforts, sifting through tips, re-interviewing witnesses, and scouring the park for clues that might have been missed. Yet the truth remained elusive, a specter lurking just beyond the spotlight's glare. For those who followed the case, the thrill of the unknown was intoxicating. Each new detail, a piece of clothing, a witness's fleeting memory, promised to unlock the puzzle, only to deepen its complexity. Chandra's story was no longer just about a missing intern or a scandalous affair. It was a mirror held up to a city where power and danger intertwined, where a single jog could end in tragedy. The public was hooked, drawn into a drama that was equal parts heartbreaking and electrifying, a tale of a young woman whose dreams had led her into a darkness from which she would never return. Washington, D.C., in the sweltering summer of 2001, was a city caught in a fever dream of scandal and suspicion. The disappearance of Chandra Levy, a 24-year-old intern whose bright smile and fierce ambition had been snuffed out, had ignited a firestorm that consumed the nation's capital. Her name was on every tongue, her face plastered across every screen, and at the center of the maelstrom stood Gary Condit, the California congressman whose illicit affair with Chandra had turned him into America's most vilified man. The media smelled blood, and they hunted him relentlessly, their headlines dripping with innuendo. Congressman's secret lover vanishes. Was Condit involved? The public, intoxicated by the cocktail of sex, power, and mystery, hung on every word, their curiosity morphing into obsession. But while the spotlight burned Condit to ash, a darker truth slithered through the shadows of Rock Creek Park, evading capture with a predator's cunning. The police investigation, under the glare of a ravenous press, was a chaotic dance of missteps and desperation. The D.C. Metropolitan Police Department, strained by the case's high profile and the city's own violent undercurrents, zeroed in on Condit almost immediately. His evasive answers and refusal to confirm the affair made him an easy target. Detectives grilled him in tense, closed-door interviews, probing for cracks in his polished facade. Condit, his charm fraying, insisted he had nothing to do with Chandra's disappearance, but his denials only fanned the flames. Why had he instructed Chandra to leave her ID behind? Why were there late-night calls between them, some lasting mere seconds, as if one was checking on the other's silence? The public imagined a sordid cover-up, a powerful man orchestrating a disappearance to protect his career. Talk shows buzzed with theories. Had Condit hired someone to make Chandra vanish? Was there a political machine at work, silencing a young woman who knew too much? The media frenzy reached a fever pitch, turning Condit's life into a circus of suspicion. Reporters staked out his Adams Morgan apartment, their cameras catching every nervous glance, every hurried step. His wife, Carolyn, stood by him, her face a mask of stoic pain, but whispers of other affairs began to surface, painting Condit as a serial philanderer. A flight attendant came forward, claiming a past relationship with the congressman, and stories of his charm turning predatory filled the tabloids. The nation was hooked, drawn to the drama like moths to a flame, each revelation more tantalizing than the last. Yet the police had little to go on, no body, no crime scene, no evidence tying Condit to anything beyond infidelity. The case was a house of cards, built on speculation and crumbling under scrutiny. Meanwhile, Rock Creek Park loomed as a silent accomplice, its dense trails and hidden ravines mocking the search efforts. The park, a 1,700-acre wilderness where Chandra was last known to have gone jogging, was a labyrinth of possibilities and perils. Police dogs sniffed through underbrush, divers plunged into murky streams, and helicopters swept overhead. But the park gave up nothing. Its beauty was deceptive, a siren's call that masked a history of violence. Other women had reported attacks in the park. Lone joggers grabbed from behind, their screams swallowed by the trees. One woman, assaulted just months before Chandra's disappearance, described a man with a knife, his eyes cold and predatory. The police began to wonder, was Chandra's disappearance less about a scandalous affair and more about a killer hiding in plain sight? As the summer dragged on, the investigation stalled, trapped in a cycle of media-fueled hysteria and dead ends. Condit, under pressure, agreed to a polygraph test, but he insisted on using his own examiner, a move that only deepened suspicions. The results cleared him, but the public scoffed. Polygraphs were unreliable, and Condit's wealth and connections made the test feel like a charade. His political career was unraveling. Constituents back in California turned against him, and his once secure seat in Congress became a battleground. The Levys, Chandra's parents, became fixtures on television, Their grief a raw wound that fueled the public's outrage. Susan Levy's voice trembled as she pleaded for answers, her eyes searching the cameras for a truth that refused to come. Then, a new threat emerged, one that shifted the narrative away from Condit's gilded world to the gritty streets of D.C. In the shadows of the investigation, police began to hear whispers of another suspect, a man named Ingmar Guandique, a 21-year-old Salvadoran immigrant with a history of violence. Guandique was no stranger to Rock Creek Park. He had been arrested in 2001 for burglaries in the area, but a deeper look revealed something more sinister. 2 women had reported attacks in the park that spring, both describing a young man with a slight build and a menacing presence. One victim, Hallie Schilling, recounted a terrifying assault on May 14, 2001, just weeks after Chandra vanished. A man had grabbed her from behind, a knife pressed to her throat, his breath hot against her ear. She fought back and escaped, but the memory haunted her, a ghost that matched the timeline of Chandra's disappearance. Guandique became a person of interest, but he was maddeningly elusive. Already in custody for the Schilling attack, he was questioned about Chandra, his dark eyes giving nothing away. He denied knowing her, his answers clipped and defiant. The police had no physical evidence linking him to Chandra, no DNA, no witnesses, no smoking gun. The park, vast and uncooperative, had erased any trace of what happened on May 1st. Guandique's criminal record painted a chilling picture, a history of petty theft, a penchant for targeting women, a familiarity with the park's hidden corners. But without Chandra's body, the case against him was circumstantial, a whisper of suspicion that couldn't compete with the roar of Condit's scandal. The tension built to a crescendo, the city pulsating with the need for answers. Every news cycle brought a new twist, a new theory to feed the public's hunger. Was Guandique the monster who had stalked Chandra? Or was he a convenient scapegoat, a way to shift blame from a powerful man? The media, reluctant to let go of Condit's narrative, kept him in the crosshairs, but cracks began to form. Detectives dug deeper into Guandique's past, interviewing his associates, scouring his movements. A cellmate claimed Guandique had bragged about attacking women in the park, but the story was murky, unverified. The police were chasing a phantom, a killer who seemed to melt into the city's underbelly, leaving only fear in his wake. The resolution came not with a bang, but with a slow, agonizing unraveling. By late 2001, the investigation had exhausted its leads on Condit. Despite the public's fixation, no evidence tied him to Chandra's disappearance beyond their affair. The focus shifted to Guandique, but he remained a shadow, his guilt plausible but unproven. The discovery of Chandra's remains in May 2002 would later reignite the case, but in the heat of 2001, the police were left grasping at straws. The public, still captivated, began to see the truth. Chandra's killer was out there, hidden in the city's pulse, a predator who thrived on the chaos of a scandal that had distracted everyone from the real danger. The drama of the pursuit was electric, a high-wire act of suspicion and evasion that kept the nation on edge. Condit's fall from grace was a spectacle, but it was Guandique's elusiveness that chilled the bone. He was a ghost in the machine, a man who walked free while Chandra's family mourned, their daughter's fate a question mark that haunted Washington streets. The case was far from over, its secrets buried deep in the park's shadows, waiting for the next act to unfold. The air in Washington, D.C., hung heavy with unanswered questions as the Chandra Levy case stretched into 2002, a wound that refused to heal. The discovery of her remains in Rock Creek Park, a scattering of bones beneath the park's deceptive canopy, had shattered any hope that the vibrant 24-year-old might still be alive. Her sports bra, knotted and torn, whispered of a violent struggle, a final, desperate fight in the park's shadowed depths. The city, still reeling from a scandal that had engulfed Congressman Condit, now turned its gaze to a new figure, Ingmar Guandique, a 21-year-old Salvadoran immigrant whose predatory shadow loomed over the investigation. The nation was hooked, drawn into a drama that pulsed with intrigue, betrayal, and the chilling possibility that a killer had been hiding in plain sight all along. But as the police closed in, the truth proved as slippery as the trails where Chandra had taken her last run, leading to a climax that would leave more questions than answers. The pursuit of Guandique was a slow burn, a cat-and-mouse game that kept Washington on edge. By 2002, the D.C. police, battered by criticism for their handling of the case, had shifted their focus from Condit to this new suspect. Wandik was no stranger to violence. Already in custody for attacking two women in Rock Creek Park, he carried the weight of suspicion like a second skin. His slight frame and cold eyes masked a chilling familiarity with the park's hidden corners, where he had stalked joggers with a predator's precision. One victim, Hallie Schilling, had described a terrifying assault in May 2001, just weeks after Chandra vanished, a knife to her throat, a struggle that ended only when she broke free. Another woman, Christy Wiegand, told a similar tale of terror. The parallels were haunting. Lone women, isolated trails, a sudden, brutal attack. Could Wandik have been the one who silenced Chandra forever? The investigation gained momentum, fueled by a tip that sent shivers down the spines of detectives. A cellmate of Wandik's, a man hardened by the D.C. jail's grim walls, came forward with a bombshell. Wandik had confessed to him. According to the informant, Wandik bragged about attacking Chandra, describing how he grabbed her during her jog, dragged her into the underbrush, and killed her to keep her quiet. The words were chilling, a glimpse into a mind that saw women as prey. The informant's story was murky, riddled with the inconsistencies of a jailhouse snitch, but it was enough to electrify the case. The media pounced, painting Wandik as a monster who had turned Rock Creek Park into his hunting ground. The public, still hungry for answers, devoured every detail, their curiosity tinged with horror at the thought of a killer so brazen, so close. By 2008, the case reached a boiling point. The D.C. police, under pressure to deliver justice, formally charged Wandik with Chandra's murder. The evidence was thin, no DNA, no fingerprints, no murder weapon. But the prosecution built a case on circumstance and the informant's testimony. Wandik's history of attacks in the park, his proximity to the crime scene, and his alleged confession formed a narrative that was as compelling as it was fragile. The trial, which began in 2010, was a spectacle that gripped the nation. The courtroom buzzed with tension, reporters scribbling furiously as Chandra's parents, Robert and Susan Levy, sat in the gallery, their faces etched with a grief that had festered for nearly a decade. Susan's eyes burned with a mother's fury, her voice trembling as she spoke to the press. "We want to know who took our daughter from us." The prosecution painted a vivid picture. Wandik, a drifter with a violent streak, had seen Chandra jogging alone, her dark hair bouncing, her focus on the trail ahead. He had struck with the speed of a predator, overpowering her in a secluded ravine, her screams swallowed by the park's dense foliage. The knotted sports bra, found with her remains, became a haunting symbol of her struggle, a detail that sent chills through the courtroom. The informant's testimony was the linchpin, his words dripping with menace as he recounted Wandik's alleged confession. The defense, however, fought back, arguing that the case was a house of cards built on desperation. No physical evidence linked Wandik to Chandra, and the informant's credibility was shaky at best, a career criminal with a motive to lie for leniency. Yet the jury, swayed by the emotional weight of Chandra's story, delivered a verdict in November 2010 guilty. Wandik was sentenced to 60 years, a moment that brought a fleeting sense of closure to a city that had been holding its breath. The climax was electrifying, a resolution that seemed to tie a bow on a decade of pain. Chandra's family wept, the public exhaled, and the media declared justice served. But the thrill of the conviction was short-lived, unraveling in a way that left everyone reeling. In 2015, cracks in the case began to surface. The informant's testimony, the cornerstone of the prosecution, was called into question when it emerged that he may have lied, his story tainted by inconsistencies and possible coaching. New evidence suggested the police had mishandled the investigation, overlooking other suspects and rushing to pin the crime on Wandik. The defense pounced, demanding a retrial, and the courtroom drama reignited. In 2016, a judge overturned Wandik's conviction, citing the unreliable testimony and prosecutorial errors. The man who had been branded a killer walked free, deported to El Salvador in 2017, leaving behind a case that was once again wide open. The fallout was a gut punch. Chandra's parents, who had clung to the hope of justice, were left adrift, their daughter's killer still a shadow in the wind. The public, once so certain of Guandique's guilt, was thrust back into the mystery, their curiosity reignited by the unresolved questions. Had Guandique been the predator who ended Chandra's life, or was he a scapegoat, a convenient answer to a crime too complex for easy solutions? Could Gary Condit, now a faded figure living quietly in Arizona, still hold secrets that had never come to light? Or was there another figure, someone still lurking in D.C. shadows, who had escaped justice entirely? The city buzzed with theories, each more tantalizing than the last, as Rock Creek Park remained a silent witness, its trails whispering of secrets yet to be uncovered. The Chandra Levy case, once a closed book, was now a story without an ending, a puzzle that refused to be solved. The drama of the trial, the thrill of the chase, the heartbreak of the Levys, it all swirled together in a narrative that was as seductive as it was unsettling. For those who followed the case, the open-ended outcome was maddening yet magnetic, a cliffhanger that begged for more. What truths lay buried in the park's depths? Who else might have crossed Chandra's path that fateful day? The answers, if they exist, are out there, waiting to be found, and the next chapter of this chilling saga promises revelations that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Stay tuned to our channel for the next installment, where we'll dive deeper into the shadows of Chandra's story, chasing the secrets that still haunt Washington, D.C.